Humiliation, threats and brutal beatings. That's how some of those on board a Syria-bound plane described the welcome they received in Turkey. F-16 fighter jets were scrambled to ground the Moscow-Damascus flight. It was carrying over 30 passengers, including small children. More details now from RT's Medina Kochnova.
The plane has finally reached its destination and landed in Damascus. But before that, just a few hours ago, we managed to speak directly to those people on board. People sounded very scared and very frightened. They were intimidated and even received threats. Here are some comments that we managed to receive when they were on board at the Ankara airport on what they had to go through.
The plane has been surrounded by people in masks. They seized all the cargo on board. 4 people have been beaten up, 2 crew and 2 passengers. They tried to force them to sign documents. We don't know what these papers are about. We are scared for the fate of the captain. He has been taken away and threatened with arrest if he doesn't sign an emergency landing paper.
I'm on board with 3 children. We're all hungry. I saw that a trolley was driven up to the plane and people began to carry out boxes out of the plane. Turks opened these boxes, took pictures of what's inside them. We all saw what was inside. There was no weaponry at all. Oh my God, it was obvious even for my child. They were full of some paperwork. It is a lie about the weapons.
Turkey says that the reason for such a move was the information that the Turkish intelligence received that the plane was carrying some military cargo. However, later there were some speculations that the cargo that was found contained radio equipment instead of any weapons. Meanwhile, this Syrian air passenger plane was carrying 37 people on board, and among them were small children. Also, according to the reports, 17 were Russians. As soon as this plane crossed the Turkish border, Turkish F-16 fighter jets forced the plane to land, and after the search that lasted for more than 9 hours, the cargo was confiscated by the Turkish security forces. Meanwhile, the director for the Syria Civil Aviation Agency says that this whole search underwent in a breach of international regulations and also violates the Convention on International Civil Aviation. As I said before, the plane has finally reached its destination and landed at Damascus airport.
Hello everyone, welcome to GGN. Today is Thursday, October 11th, 2012. I'm Darko. So obviously I'm going to be covering the Mideast in this first video. And I'll be covering the Turkish hijacking or skyjacking of a Syrian-bound plane. So, no suspicious item found on Syria-bound plane, says engineer. The engineer says no suspicious items have been found on board the Syria-bound passenger airplane grounded in Turkey yesterday, adding that the plane crew have been handcuffed by Turkish security forces. So it also says that they pointed guns at the crew members when they handcuffed them, and going down here talking about Russia. Said that the move irked Russia, which demanded an explanation from the Turkish officials, and infuriated Damascus, where the transport minister condemned Ankara's move as an act of air piracy, like skyjacking, right, which contradicts civil aviation treaties. Well, they're helping to carry out terrorist attacks and supporting terrorists, Turkey, that is, on their border. So, this is all coming after supposedly Turkey got hit with mortars, which is usually used by the Free Syrian Army and Al-Qaeda terrorists. So, this was there's a good chance that that was a false flag attack, if that's what you want to call it. And so now they've just been on the defense, right? Like, oh, we're under attack, we're under attack. So, and then right after that, they wrote a bill saying that they can authorize military action inside Syria. So now this happens. So that's pretty much 2 acts of terrorism from Turkey in the past 6 months. Syria says Erdogan keeps lying over planes. Syria's accused the Turkish Prime Minister Erdogan of lying and claiming that a Syrian-bound passenger aircraft intercepted by Turkey was carrying arms to Damascus. They say that the Prime Minister of Turkey is doing this basically to justify his government's hostile attitude towards Syria. So they condemn the move as hostile and reprehensible, and another sign of the hostile policies of the Erdogan government, which harbors anti-Syrian insurgents and bombs Syrian territory. And of course, the U.S. rushed to Turkey's support after Erdogan made the claim about these ammunitions and stuff. The plane did not carry ammunition or military equipment, and Erdogan's comments lack credibility, and he must show the equipment and ammunition at least to his people. And this was coming from the Syrian Information ministry. But the U.S. said what? The U.S. State Department, of course, we strongly support the government of Turkey's decision to inspect the plane. So, in other words, they were probably the ones that told them to do it, right? And they are a NATO country. Then you have the Russians saying neither weapons nor any kind of systems or parts for the military equipment were on board or could have been on board. But it's interesting because remember this, you have arms intended for Saudi military seen at Syrian rebels' base, communication equipment. So it's okay when crates of arms and communication equipment and cash flow to the Free Syrian Army, which are linked with Al-Qaeda and mercenaries and Islamic extremists that are killing mostly civilians and stuff like that, journalists. But God forbid if there is actually some weapons coming from Russia, which Syria has had contracts prior to this Western invasion to get a regime change. So, you know, with Egypt puppet down, U.S. now looks for replacement in Syria. The U.S. seeks to make up for its loss of regional influence after the fall of Western-backed Egyptian dictator Hosni Mubarak by installing another pro-West regime in Syria. And they might want to do that, but as far as the new Egyptian leader, I don't know. I think he can go either way. So, I mentioned before about the Muslim Brotherhood being a Western proxy, but I remember coming across an article as well saying, a report that the world community didn't expect these more hardline Muslims to take power post-Arab Spring. That's why, with the help of its allies, mainly Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Turkey, France, Britain, Washington is sending armed groups to Syria not for democracy but for regime change and the establishment of a pro-West regime. And recently re-elected president of Venezuela, Hugo Chavez, backs Bashar al-Assad of Syria and blames the U.S. for Syrian crisis. He says he will continue to support his Syrian counterpart, Assad, and has blamed the U.S. for the 19-month unrest in the Arab country. I love what he says. He goes, "How can I not support the government of Assad if it is the legitimate government of Syria? The government of the United States is one of the parties most to blame for this disaster in Syria." And here we go. He also described the foreign-backed insurgents fighting against the Syrian government as terrorists, asking, who am I going to back? The terrorists who run around killing people right and left? So I was just talking about Turkey shooting itself in the foot, didn't I? Just, what was it, a day or two ago? And then they do this little skyjacking act of terrorism. So Turkey has been stepping up its war rhetoric against Syria. Turkey's armed forces chief said, we have retaliated for Syrian mortar shelling, again, a false flag that the same terrorists that they're supporting did, and if it continues, we'll respond more strongly. Turkey's army is on a high state of readiness, the first step for a Syrian no-fly zone. We were just talking about that. War tensions over Syria continued to spiral early Thursday, October 11th, when Turkey's armed forces were placed on a state of readiness, and its chief of staff pledged stronger response to any hostile acts by Syria. A high-placed U.S. source confirmed to Depka file that Turkey has, by carrying out the recent skyjacking and declaring Syrian airspace unsafe, has taken the first step towards creating a no-fly zone over Syria. So, you know, this is, of course, going back to the Brookings Institute policy, so they're just following a script here. It also said that another sign that is reaching a new and dangerous level, the U.S. Defense Secretary Leon Panetta referred in Brussels for the third time in 24 hours to the threat of chemical warfare. Of course, this is going back to Israel, who's been beating those drums as far as chemical weapons, and Hezbollah and Iran. So remember that link. So very interesting. Now we have a reason for the troops to Jordan. He said that U.S. troops had set up headquarters in Jordan to help monitor chemical and biological weapon sites in Syria. So, you know, they're moving forward here. Exactly what I've been talking about for the past couple months. Also with Turkey mandates for PKK strikes extended. So this is kind of another big deal, because I said this is part of them shooting themselves in the foot and sinking their own ship. They're going to be used by the West to get this regime change in Syria. They could actually try to create a Kurdish proxy state. Remember, because talking about Zionists using victims of the globalists as pawns, right? Oh, you poor victims, we're going to set you up your own state, and it'll be a Zionist-backed state. And Turkey, of course, will what? Will leave NATO after their people have had enough of Erdogan and that leadership. And yeah, so then you have this right here. They're going to go ahead and keep extending the strikes. against the Kurds by extending the government's mandate to order military strikes against Kurdistan's Worker Party militants holding up in northern Iraq for another year. And they just carried out strikes in Iraq recently. And Iraq's Maliki has actually been outspoken now, saying that he doesn't support what's going on in Syria. They won't support it. Also, it's been a little tense with Turkey as well. And actually, it's got the Russian president postponing scheduled visit to Turkey amid tension, so they may actually be a little peed off. And just today, Russia won't renew arms pact with the United States. Russia will not renew, a 21-year arms agreement with the U.S. on dismantling nuclear and chemical weapons when it expires next year. Talking about pressing the reset button, as Obama put it, right? We're restarting the Cold War, as I put it. So that's kind of a big deal. Also, Russia just had an arms pact with Iraq as well. So Iraq's been doing a lot lately. Russia's also warning NATO against prolonged stay in Afghanistan, warning the West that it will stop cooperating with NATO in Afghanistan after 2014 unless the Western military alliance gets the UN Security Council authorization for a new mission in the war-torn country, saying that they're going to have to, it's going to have to be based off international mandate. And he says it's a precondition for carrying out the operations, which are already been doing, but for Russia's cooperation with NATO. In other words, flying around their area in that airspace or in routes. There you go. Russia will be a strategic transit route for NATO as it withdraws billions of dollars of equipment from Afghanistan in the next few years. This is my website, Global Government News, GGNonline.com. That's GGNonline.com. Also on YouTube, my channels are DDarko2012 and DDarko2013. There's a poll up here. Will you vote this November? So far, you have 69% saying no, followed by 30% saying maybe. And one of the things I noticed, just real quickly, side note, as far as the elections go, is that I didn't watch them, but I heard family members just this past weekend talk about Obama looking like he was asleep at it. And I told them, I was like, well, it's probably because he already knows he's going to get elected. And then I started seeing all kinds of articles on Romney, because when I look through all these articles, I see patterns and trends and stuff like that. And I kept seeing Romney. So I'm like, so are they, wait a minute, was Obama sleeping because it's going to be Romney? And I thought about it. I'm like, well, no. Since Obama knows he's going to win, they're going to go ahead and make sure that they make it seem like Romney at the last minute is going to come, he's going to win. And then all of a sudden, it's going to be Obama the whole time. So it's a big show, right? I guess it really depends on how much Israel and Zionists are going to back, and the neocons, of course, right? That's a lot of cash, right? Military-industrial complex are going to back Romney. And remember, I was just talking about Iraq, what? Is Iraq asserting their sovereignty? And then we'll get into this later, but they're starting to come under the radar as far as the people that created that regime change in that the invasion of Iraq. Muslim Brotherhood influenced next Arab domino to fall, maybe Jordan. So we just covered this, right? Talking about King Abdullah agreed to the dissolution of parliament and early elections, but that is not enough. They seek a change of government in which the monarch would remain purely symbolic function. The real power would go to the premier Islamists. So here you go. You're going to have the same thing with the hardliners. We just covered this from October 7th. Jordan incapable without backing of West and Zionists, says Analyst. So that's what they're going to do. You know, they're going to what? They're deploying covert mission to Jordan because Syria is in the firing line. We covered this before too. Rioting forces UN staff to abandon Syrian refugee camp in Jordan. The UN evacuated staff from the refugee camp twice in the last day. With winter weather bearing down on the camp, the conditions of the refugees rioted against will only worsen. Remember, we talked about that. As the winter draws in, it's going to start getting ugly as far as the refugees go with the Syrian invasion and crisis. So I think there's a lot more going on with Jordan. Just recently we were covering this too about the people in the camps. You know, it's like ingrates. You know, they're getting help and they're sitting there throwing stones and rioting and attacking the guards and stuff at the camps. Thousands amassed in Jordan for major military exercise from May 15th, 2012, and they're talking about Eager Lion 2012 and exercise. That back in May included 12,000 multinational forces in Jordan right on Syria's border. That's what they were getting ready for. Remember I was talking about Qatari and the Gulf states, the GCC, heading up this full forceful incursion here now, stepping it up, and along with Turkey. And then, of course, Israel on their border. So it's, like I said, a pincer attack. Syria in the firing line, U.S. deploys covert mission to Jordan. And we'll return in the next video, and we'll just continue with Jordan. This is GGN, and I'm Darko. Thank you.